Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So, something happened over the weekend that I want to talk about. And that is that off the coast of Southern California, near Huntington Beach, there was an oil spill. I kind of want to talk about what happened, why it's significant, and there's a mallard that just landed nearby me. What happened, why it's significant, and a little bit of where we go from here and some things to watch for. So on October 1st and 2nd of 2021, reports started coming in near Huntington Beach, a few miles off the offshore of Huntington Beach, of oil slicks in the water. And took a little while, but the company responded, the Coast Guard responded, people got out to look at this thing. And yes, sure enough, there was definitely an oil spill, and it was a fair-sized one. Reports are differing. This is definitely an evolving situation. It's developing as we speak, but numbers between 126,000 to 144,000 gallons of crude oil seeped out of something into the waters off the coast of Southern California. No one's entirely sure exactly what caused this, but it looks like maybe an anchor from a ship that was waiting to come into one of the docks in Los Angeles may have hit a pipe. So there are 23 offshore oil rigs, offshore oil drilling platforms off the coast of Southern California, and pipelines that connect these to facilities on the coast. So that means that there is miles and miles of pipe on the ocean floor connecting these offshore rigs. Some of them are 4-7 miles off the coast, all the way back to the actual shore. So perhaps a ship dropped its anchor. Maybe as it moved, that anchor dragged and it crashed into one of these pipes and bent it and broke it. Now, that's speculative at this point. That's one of the leading hypotheses, that it was an anchor. Could have been a lot of things. What we do know for sure is that a pipe has a 13-inch gap in it, a hole, and that the pipe was moved, laterally displaced, moved to the side a decent ways. So some damage was definitely done, and quite a bit of oil has now leaked into the waters of the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Southern California. Now, that oil isn't staying put. Oil doesn't. Currents, winds push those waters around. Some of it has definitely moved in towards the coast along the Huntington Beach area. It is continuing to drift south. The beaches along Los Angeles and San Diego are all sort of bracing and preparing for this oil to arrive in unknown quantities. Luckily, the oil was stopped. The pipeline was closed off, was shut down. So there's no more oil coming out of the system. But what is out there is plenty. I mean, we're talking in the hundreds of thousands of gallons, kind of metric. That's a lot of oil to have to deal with. And so that's what happened. Kind of why it's important is what happens to that oil. We have seen from examples like the Deepwater Horizon, that was a disaster in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010 that spilled a lot of oil. We have seen even farther back from examples like the Exxon Valdez in Alaska that was an oil spill that happened in 1989. We have seen from these examples that the effects of oil spills can be really long lasting. They're really hard to clean up. They keep sort of churning and reoccurring little chunks of oil that maybe have been submerged will surface and kind of recoat beaches, recoat animals. So it can be a real problem that lasts for decades. And that's likely to happen off the coast of Huntington Beach. So there are several marshes that are probably going to be impacted. Some of them already have been, and there are probably more that are going to be, as this oil moves into these marsh habitats and causes all sorts of chaos for fish, for birds, for mammals, for human health and safety. At least 6 different species of birds have already had at least a few individuals reported oiled so far, and I'm sure that number is going to increase. And just getting oil out of these habitats once it gets into a marsh is a long, arduous, and difficult process. And it's only moderately successful a lot of the times. You know, you can get a certain amount of the oil out of an area, but some of it you're never going to quite get, and it's got to just sort of dissipate on its own, which can be a very long process, and of course leaves all those chemicals in that environment. So, not ideal. Unfortunately, it's kind of the best thing we've got right now, is to get out as much as we possibly can. And if oil reoccurs, if there's new sightings of oiled animals, go back in and keep on cleaning as time progresses, as the years and even decades progress. A couple of things I wanted to think about, sort of looking at the future, is looking at the oil rigs in California and thinking, okay, what do we do about these things? There are 23 oil rigs off the coast of Southern California. 11 of those already, currently, are not producing anything. They're not producing natural gas, they're not producing oil, they're not producing anything. They're defunct for all intents and purposes. What do we do about those? Many of them are in the process of being decommissioned right now. Many of the other ones are sort of slated to begin that process in coming years. In a lot of ways, decommissioning an unused oil rig sounds great. Like, let's decommission them. Let's stop using them. If we stop pumping oil out of them, there won't be any more oil spills, right? Well, turns out not quite. Because decommissioning and removal are not the same thing. When you have an offshore oil platform, it's got a bunch of different parts. It has the foundation laid in the base of the ocean floor. It's got all of the structures that lead up out of the water and above it in the actual platform. And it's got a pipeline that connects that structure to refineries and other facilities on the coast. When we talk about decommissioning one of these things, you got to think sort of differently about those different pieces. And this is where some of my concerns come in. Removing all of the structure that is above the water is a great idea. We can decommission and remove that stuff. Absolutely. That's good. And that's usually what happens when we talk about decommissioning. The foundation can be a little bit more problematic because it actually might very well be more ecologically damaging to go in and remove all that concrete and steel rather than just leave it in place and allow the organisms of the seabed to recolonize the area and kind of turn it into a little artificial marsh. So that's an example where decommissioning is good. Let's not use it anymore. But removal actually might be bad. And then there's the pipeline. Decommissioning a pipeline often means sort of capping it, closing it off, but then leaving it in place. So this is where it can kind of messy because those oil pipelines have a lot of oil in them, and that oil can slowly seep out while it's just lying there on the seafloor. And this is what oftentimes happens in the industry when they talk about decommissioning a pipeline. They mean capping it off and leaving it in place. And this is where decommissioning and removal not being the same thing becomes really significant. Because I think those pipelines are different from that platform. those, when they're decommissioned, should be removed. Get those things out of there. So a few different pieces and a few different words that you will probably see discussed in the media. If you're following this story, people talk about decommissioning a lot. However, exactly what that means, and is it the same as removal? And is it the same as removal for each part? Gets fuzzy in the language. So watch as it's being reported. See what kind of conversations you're seeing. Let me know if you're seeing conversations specifically about decommissioning. Do those stories specifically reference removal? And what parts of the system are they talking about? The platform, the foundation, the pipeline? I'd be curious to know what you find. And it's definitely going to be a situation that I'm going to be watching extensively, because it's going to be a big, big deal going forward. This definitely constitutes an ecological disaster. So, unfortunately, sort of breaking news, it's not great. At least it's not still leaking. That's a positive. But the cleanup for this is going to be a long, long process that we're all going to have to be dealing with for a long time. Beaches across Southern California are closed. Several counties are being impacted by this. They are going to be closed for weeks. And the cleanup effort is going to last, like I said, for many, many years. So, a situation to keep your eyes on. I hope that this has given you some food for thought. I hope that you do keep an eye on this situation. Read up on it, watch the news, follow along, see how this process unfolds. Because staying informed on a lot of these things is really, really important. And in the meantime, thank you very much for the view. Subscribe to the channel. Until next time, enjoy the natural world.